Welcome to the Pharma Podcast, conversations with industry experts and business leaders about important and current topics in Canadian pharma, biotech, and medtech. I'm your host, Sam Tarantino. In this episode of the Pharma Podcast, my guest is Vijay Wadhawan, Vice President, Health and Wellness at Environics Research. Getting fast, convenient access to healthcare is frustrating for many Canadians. COVID-19 has exacerbated existing challenges. Telemedicine is a new delivery channel for medicine with the potential to make healthcare more accessible. Vijay will discuss the findings from a recent survey conducted by Environics to understand Canadians' attitudes toward healthcare and telemedicine. Vijay, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sam. It's a pleasure to be with you.
For our audience, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Environics Research?
Sure. So my name is Vijay. I have been working within the health and wellness sector for just over 10 years now. I've worked in a range of different areas of the industry. I started with Big Pharma working at Sanofi Pasteur as a junior product manager. I then worked at a biotech company for about 3.5 years, and then I moved into consulting, where I ended up at Environics Research. And Environics Research is the oldest independently owned Canadian market research firm that provides market research and consulting to a range of clients within the health and wellness space, as well as public and corporate affairs, financial services and insurance, as well as automotive mobility and consumer lifestyle and technology. So our agency really focuses on a range of different industries and working with various stakeholders, and also using a range of data gathering techniques in terms of primary market research, qualitative type research, using big data in combination with those to really help our clients better understand their customers, their stakeholders, so they can make better business decisions. And one of the ways that we really differentiate ourselves in the market research space is through the social values research that we've been doing for over 40 years now, where we've been studying kind of the values of Canadians and comparing it across the globe to really understand the nuances of the Canadian market, really understand what values are driving kind of behaviors, what's motivating Canadians. And what that really helps us do is help our clients understand their stakeholders or customers as people, not just as a physician or as a patient for a certain therapeutic area, but really kind of get down to the core of who those people are as individuals and how healthcare or anything else kind of fits into the rest of their life.
If memory serves me correctly, we were scheduled to have a podcast recording in February. And I think it was the day the lockdown happened, maybe the day before or the day after.
Yeah.
And everything got derailed.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a whirlwind of 2020 for sure. I think healthcare has seen a lot of changes. I think there's been a lot of positive changes within the healthcare system, particularly when it comes to virtual care. I think we've learned to adapt quickly to kind of our new scenarios and adopt new technologies to help us kind of work through this. So this is, really timely, I think, in terms of wrapping up the year and what we've seen kind of progress. I know telemedicine's been on the periphery for a long time, but I think COVID's really put it front and center for a lot of people within the healthcare industry.
So the survey, tell us about the survey, the number of Canadians surveyed and the demographics you looked at.
So we did a survey of just over 1,500 Canadians for this study, and we have a representative sample of age, gender, and regions. The only regions that we didn't include in this were the territories, so we have provincial representation across the country, and also representation from a gender and age perspective as well. So we really wanted to kind of understand where those differences lie. Obviously, with virtual care being, based on in technology, you're going to have younger audiences that are more comfortable with technology, that are going to obviously feel a bit more comfortable. But we wanted to really just understand overall how Canadians felt about telemedicine, what their concerns were when it came to telemedicine, what benefits they saw around telemedicine, and whether or not they really saw this as kind of the future of healthcare. And what we did see overwhelmingly within the study was that Canadians overall do really view virtual care as part of kind of the future of healthcare. And I don't think it's a an either or, whether we're doing virtual or in person. I think it's somewhat of a hybrid, right? So this is never going to be completely online. There are so many things that physicians and other healthcare professionals have to do in person, and we can't kind of let go of that. But I think what this has provided us is insight into kind of where Canadians see themselves going. And what this really shows, I think, is how Canadians see technology really integrating with their in the way that they kind of manage their overall health and wellness.
So I believe this survey is the first of a series of annual reports that you're going to conduct exploring Canadians' perceptions and opinions about virtual healthcare. Now, maybe before you answer that question, the difference, telemedicine, virtual healthcare, digital healthcare. What's your definition, or at least how did you frame it in the survey? Is it on the phone? Is it a Zoom-like call on a computer? Is it a platform?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there is a lot of kind of confusion around what it means. When we positioned this to Canadians, we gave examples within each of the different categories. So while we may consider virtual care a telephone call, when I speak about virtual care, I'm thinking about it more from a platform perspective, where there are kind of clear security measures that are being taken in order to kind of ensure privacy, that they're following laws, etc. I think with telephone and using Skype and Zoom for these types of personal matters, there are a lot more concerns from Canadians, is what we found in the study. They do have more trust in kind of dedicated healthcare or virtual healthcare platforms. So there are many available, that you can get as a consumer. There's other that you can get through your workplace. And so there is a bit of confusion. But when I think about virtual healthcare and really what the future of virtual healthcare looks like, I think about it more within that kind of platform experience where, your records are being kept through the platform. You're being contacted directly through the platform. So there's no chance of, or there's less chance of a breach of any sort.
Okay, so the rationale behind the survey.
So the survey was sponsored by a company called Dialogue, which provides a virtual healthcare platform essentially to Canadians that they get through their workplace. But the client was really just eager to understand, in general, how do Canadians feel about virtual care, to really set a benchmark in terms of where virtual care is heading. So the purpose of the study was really to look at this from a overall level, not specific to any one platform, but to really look at what do Canadians look for in a virtual healthcare platform? How comfortable are they with a virtual healthcare platform? And what are the metrics that we can kind of develop and track over time to demonstrate the value of a virtual healthcare option for Canadians, and what it means to Canadians' overall health and wellness, and what Canadians believe that they can really benefit from having this available, or these types of services available to them.
Okay, so what are some of the current, or at least what your survey found or identified, current attitudes to access to healthcare?
Sure. So we looked at a few different metrics for access. So we looked at, how many people have a family physician. About 85% of Canadians say that they have a family physician. But what was really kind of clear, or what really kind of pointed in a direction of, in terms of lack of access, was that there often can be a really big lag in terms of getting to a healthcare professional for any sort of, minor ailment or minor health concern that people have. So people can be waiting up to 2 weeks to see a doctor sometimes. And so, the number of appointments that people are doing per year, is on average around 4. And when we talked about kind of frustrations with the healthcare system, it was really about access. So it was about not being able to meet with a healthcare professional kind of immediately when they needed, having to wait in waiting rooms with other sick people. I think that's really top of mind for people, particularly in COVID. and not being able to kind of schedule an appointment with a healthcare professional in a time that works for them. And Canadians are busy people. We lead very busy lives, and I think in this expectation economy that we really live in, where you can order everything directly to your door and it all comes through an app, I think that healthcare is a bit behind in this in many ways, and our ability to kind of meet consumers where they are and provide services that are really valuable and value their time, we haven't been really able to do. But virtual platforms have kind of demonstrated that there are options, and there are ways to kind of connect with people at a time that kind of works for them, and also doesn't disrupt the rest of their work, their home life, their school, whatever it may be.
Has COVID and the corresponding lockdown made it more difficult for patients to access healthcare?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did ask some specific questions on COVID, and what we heard from Canadians was that about almost 50%, it was about 46%, say that it was much more difficult to access, or somewhat more difficult to access healthcare because of COVID-19. And so what that shows is that, I know this from work that we do with physicians. Obviously, physicians have to take extra precautions when they're seeing patients in terms of how many people they can have waiting in their waiting room, whether or not they want to be seeing kind of a lot of sick patients in their waiting rooms, or if it's just easier to call or meet them via Skype. So COVID-19 has definitely had a huge impact in terms of access to healthcare, for sure.
So is this our future? Is virtual healthcare the future of healthcare?
I think so. I think Canadians have also demonstrated that that virtual healthcare is kind of the future. We had about 70% of Canadians kind of stating that virtual healthcare is at least part of the future, and that's why I think it's important that we understand that Canadians see this as kind of complementary to what they're already doing kind of within their health and wellness. I think that what virtual healthcare does allow is, and what we've seen kind of virtual healthcare offer, is access to, specialized physicians that may not be in the area that you live, for people who live in rural or, harder to reach places to access healthcare. Virtual care can play a big role there. So I do think that virtual care and the comfort level of Canadians in receiving healthcare through a virtual platform is pretty high. It's not 100% obviously, but there is an appetite for it. So I think that, and now that we're seeing that we can kind of do it, I think the future really looks at how do we optimize these types of offerings for Canadians.
So what were some of the advantages identified in your survey?
Yeah, so there was a few different things that people kind of identified. One was that through a virtual care platform, or doing it through virtual care, I don't have to travel. I don't have to take time off work. I don't have to, find a babysitter for my kid. So the convenience aspect was obviously one of them. The ability to have the appointment conducted in different ways, so whether it be through video or through just an audio or a telephone, it allows you to kind of make it fit into your life. So again, that idea of having the options of how you want to communicate, whether it be, some people want to text with their doctor or text what they're going through or something like that. So having those different options for various mediums of communication, I think we're definitely a benefit, or a recognized benefit. Also, mental health support. I think there's obviously COVID-19 has had a lot of impact on many of our mental health, just due to the lockdown and the way that we're kind of living our lives now. And I think having mental health support through a virtual care platform, not through this study, but through other work that I've done, I've heard from patients that sometimes not meeting someone face to face, or being able to talk to someone through a virtual platform where you're able to still remain a bit anonymous, particularly for mental health challenges, can be seen as a real benefit for patients. And so just providing that option and the convenience, along with, the ability to have kind of follow up and have the doctor on the virtual care line kind of send your prescription to the pharmacy. You're not having to run back and forth to the pharmacy. So a lot of it really was kind of around the convenience, but definitely some benefits in terms of the types of care that they can get.
Absolutely. Speaking for myself, coincidentally, I had a doctor's appointment this morning,
Oh, nice.
and I had this exact conversation with my doctor, and I said, "This is awfully convenient. I don't see myself going back.
Yeah.
How about you, as a physician? Would once this pandemic is under control, will you continue with virtual care?" And his answer is he intends to, but it all depends on the funding.
Right.
As long as funding exists, and that they will not take a pay cut in any way, my doctor intends to continue with virtual care. So I think it really comes down to, I think we all recognize the value, the convenience of virtual healthcare, but I don't think the doctors, as long as they're made whole in the equation, will continue with this. Frankly speaking, for myself, I'm willing to pay. Right, like I would pay for the service,
right,
for all of the advantages that you just mentioned. I don't have to take time off work. I don't have to put gas in my car to drive across town, right? Wait in traffic, and the risks associated with driving across town. Wait in a waiting room with other sick patients coughing over me and potentially me coughing on them. And then to see a doctor for something that could have easily been done over the phone.
Absolutely.
A simple consult, a prescription renewal, check my blood pressure. These are simple things that can be monitored at home. And so it's going to be difficult going back. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think something that was really interesting that we did look at was whether people were willing to pay out of pocket for virtual healthcare. So you mentioned that for you it's something that you would pay for. I think for me it's also something that I would pay for, but 54% of Canadians do say that they're unwilling to pay. Another 27% saying that they're somewhat unwilling to pay. So there is a small percentage of Canadians that are willing to pay. And I think within Canada, because of the way that our healthcare system is set up, we're not used to paying. And I think that a lot of Canadians also hold that with a lot of pride in terms of we can access healthcare, easily and without worrying about leaving the doctor's office with a huge bill. But I think attitudes around that may start to shift once people kind of see the convenience of it. But again, I think that virtual healthcare is not going to overtake any sort of in-person type of care. I think it's going to be used in tandem. So think about someone with a chronic disease like diabetes, for example, and they're having their blood tests, every 3 months, or they should be, and they're going in to talk to their doctor about their results. It's not even really about a checkup or anything like that.
Exactly.
Think about the kind of convenience, efficiencies that can be realized within a healthcare system that is under a lot of pressure, right? Like we know this within the Canadian healthcare system. It is under pressure. We have an aging population. We have a lot of resources that are being taken up right now by COVID, but in general, there are lack of resources. And so I think when I think about how the government should adopt this, it's really about balancing kind of priorities and thinking about the best interest of the patient, of course, but also thinking about how do we make this system more equitable and more accessible to more Canadians so that we have a healthier population, and the stresses on the system that come, especially at the hospital level from emergency departments, et cetera, can be reduced because people are being a bit more proactive or taking a bit more active, an active role in their healthcare. And sometimes the reason that people can't do that is simply because of convenience. Their doctors doesn't live close enough. Their work schedules don't allow them to go see the doctor as frequently as they probably should. So I'm optimistic for the future of what virtual care and other technologies in general can really bring to the forefront and help Canadians live better, healthier lives.
There has to be advantages to employers as well, right? Their employees
Absolutely.
now become more productive. They don't have to take time off work.
Absolutely.
In theory, you can have private rooms within an office setting, or obviously at home, and just have a 20-minute consult with your doctor. And again, all those advantages. You don't have to leave work. You don't have to drive across town, and it's a lost day of productivity in many cases.
Absolutely.
So can you speak to, did your survey look at the advantages and implications for employers?
Yeah, so we saw that about 1 in 3 Canadians taking off 3 or more hours of work or school for a healthcare appointment. So think about that over an organization of 1,000 or 10,000 people. Think about how many working hours there kind of are lost, and really, for what purpose? Like, how many times, again, do you go to the doctor where you actually need to see them in person versus something that you could kind of do over the phone? I think that along with that, if we start to kind of decrease the length of time that you take out of the time of your day to see the doctor, a simple phone call that maybe lasts 5 or 10 minutes also is more efficient for the physician themselves, because they're not having people wait and complain about waiting in the waiting room, et cetera, et cetera. So you can really leverage technology in a meaningful way there, I think.
I imagine this could be an extension to a company's benefits program.
Absolutely. There was so one of the questions we asked was, should employers kind of provide virtual healthcare options for their employees? And 81% said that they either strongly agree or agree with that statement. So, and I do think that organizations are starting to recognize the importance of a very holistic healthcare wellness package, and they're recognizing the benefits of technology, right? A lot of these corporations are ahead of the curve when it comes to technology in so many other ways. I can't see why virtual care won't start to be part of that conversation now that these different platforms and things are available for Canadians to use.
And I imagine privacy and security would be absolutely critical.
Absolutely. So I think in terms of comfort with technology, like I said, we did see a high comfort level with technology, over 70% really saying that they trust technology, they're comfortable with it. But the thing that kind of really stuck out was that they have some privacy concerns about receiving their healthcare online. Obviously, when we asked about virtual care platforms specifically that are not Skype or not Zoom, the concerns around privacy did go down, but they still exist because we've all heard of data breaches and everything else. So I think that is going to be something that people are concerned about. But when we look at things at Environics, because we look at it through the lens of values, what we found is that there are certain Canadians and certain kind of value segments, one group that we call the responsible proactives, and one that's called the holistic intuitives. And both of those groups are very kind of comfortable with advocating for themselves when it comes to their own personal health. They have a general sense of comfort with technology. They do online searches around different healthcare concerns that they might have, reading different blogs, searching for new information on conditions, et cetera. And I think those two groups particularly, we did see kind of a higher level of acceptance of virtual care, as well as a willingness to kind of use a virtual care platform as part of their overall healthcare routine. The ones that we saw, the segment that we saw kind of have the least amount of excitement around is what we call the doctor's disciples. And those are really kind of an older demographic of Canadians. They're still a very big portion of our population, about 32% of our population. But that is a group that's slowly kind of shrinking. And as we see more and more, grandparents using Facebook and Instagram to see their grandkids' pictures online, they're starting to see that technology is not as scary as they once may have thought. And a lot of these apps are very intuitive. And so you do see, older Canadians as well adopting some of this technology. But in terms of where we're seeing kind of future growth within Canadians and how Canadians really view their health overall, we really do see this move towards kind of being in this responsible, proactive type of mindset where people really believe that that they have a part to play with their health, and they're not just going to listen to what the doctor says all the time. They're going to take time to do research and go online to hear different perspectives.
That's awesome. Thanks, Vijay. Any final thoughts?
I think my only final thoughts here is really because of the audience that your podcast reach, and having listened to a few of your podcasts myself, I think we often approach a lot of problems within healthcare from the mindset or with a bias that we have working in the healthcare system. And I think one of the most important things to recognize for people that work within the healthcare system is that there are a lot of Canadians that have trouble just navigating or knowing how to kind of go about entering the healthcare system in general, how to find a physician. They're not as, if they're diagnosed with something like rheumatoid arthritis or diabetes or something, they don't know exactly where to go or what to do with that information. And so when we're thinking about building solutions, when we're thinking about how do we best serve the Canadian population and what they need, we really need to be thinking about meeting people where they are, not bringing in too many of our own biases into the conversations. I know that a lot of the healthcare marketers that I work with, they fall into that responsible proactives category, and I often get them to do a survey before I do any sort of workshop with them so that they understand that the mindset and the view that they have on healthcare is a bit biased, and it isn't representative of what overall healthcare or what overall Canadians kind of think about the healthcare system. And so we really need to be asking good questions of people and not expecting them to be somewhere that they're not already. I think bringing people along, you'll have a much better chance of having people accept new technologies, new therapies. You'll have people be more engaged and want to advocate for their own health. But we have a lot of people where talking about healthcare or thinking about healthcare is just an anxiety-provoking issue. And I think that we need to kind of recognize that all of these different mindsets exist within our very diverse country, and that we need to be thinking about kind of how do we cater to those, especially those that aren't as kind of literate within the healthcare system, and making solutions and creating technologies that really meet their needs and are easy to access for them.
Vijay, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much for having me, Sam.
How can the audience connect with you?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Vijay Wadhawan. It's Wadhawan. First name is Vijay. And I think you'll include some of my details on your site as well. So they can reach me there. And my email and everything is posted on my LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to learn anything more. Or if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Contact details for Vijay are also available on our website at thepharmapodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. This podcast can be found on our website at thepharmapodcast.ca. The Pharma Podcast is also available to listen to for free on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. Thank you to our sound engineer, Errol Francis. Please subscribe and follow me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on future podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on this podcast, or if there is a topic we should cover in future episodes, please connect with me via LinkedIn.